Okay, here we are, 6:30 Eastern Time. Listen, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I wanted to get into some commonly asked questions when it comes to addiction treatment. This is something that I've obviously worked in this space for a long time, and man, been asked a ton of questions. So I want to get right into it. But a couple of things, couple of pieces of homework. Obviously, you know about the podcast at this point, probably. And if you don't, well, we have a podcast. It's called Real Recovery Talk, and it can be found on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Okay, it looks like this right here. You can see the logo in the top corner, and we're also on YouTube as well. Okay. So, and if you ever want to reach out to us, you can obviously reach us at info@realrecoverytalk.com. Okay. Now, these episodes go out every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Okay. So we put 3 episodes out a week, and we have a lot of content that we put out there. So make sure you go and check that stuff out. And then we also have the Sobriety Network, and you can go into Facebook and find that. Just type in the Sobriety Network. It looks like that right there. And there's me. So make sure you go there, the Sobriety Network. That's basically going to be for anybody that is affected by addiction in whatever capacity, whether you're a family member, loved one, somebody in recovery, somebody that needs to be in recovery. We want to invite you there. Okay, so I think that's it for the homework. And if you have any questions, we're obviously gonna, I can answer questions as we go on. Just type them and I'll see them pop up on my end. All right, without further ado, here we go. Basically, what type of treatment is right for me? Okay, so this is going to be specific to treatment for drug addiction and alcoholism. Okay, I'm not talking about sex addiction. I'm not talking about food addiction or gambling addictions or anything like that. It is, in fact, solely going to be substance abuse related. Now, when it comes to a treatment, what's the right one for me? Well, that's hard to tell. Inside treatment, there's different levels of care. Okay, and I'll go through them quickly. You have detox, you have residential, you have what's called PHP, then you have IOP, and then you have outpatient. Okay, now it's a lot of acronyms, but let me break it down to you quickly. Detox is going to be your first 7 to 10 days, right? You're coming off of drugs, you're feeling like crap. That's what it is, right? It's detox. You're going to be medically monitored and given comfort medications and stuff like that. From there, you transition into residential, right? There's still going to be medical interventions. There's still going to be doctors and nursing staff there, but it's a little bit less invasive. You don't feel as bad. You're not at a medical threat to yourself anymore. And that is so between detox and res, that's going to take you through the first 30 days of your sobriety. Then you transition into a PHP level of care, which is kind of like an inpatient, right? That's going to be from day 30 to day 60, generally speaking, okay? Now, from day 30 to day 60, this is where, you're feeling good. You're starting to, you're not going through withdrawals anymore. Your brain's kind of clearing up. Maybe you're putting some weight back on, stuff like that. So that's going to be day 30 to day 60. And then you transition to what's called intensive outpatient. And intensive outpatient is generally going to be from day 60 to day 90 or day 120. And then from there, you're on outpatient, which is, that can last as long as it needs to. So what treatment is right for you? It really depends on what you're using, how much you're using, and what your resources are, and what your availability for treatment is. For the vast majority of people, I suggest start at the very beginning. If you're a drinker and you drink a lot, well, you probably should start at detox. And a lot of times I hear this all the time. Well, I'll just detox myself. Well, that's not wise. I don't suggest that. Alcohol can be deadly when you're detoxing off of it. There's only two substances that you can pass away from when it comes to detox. And that's alcohol and that's benzodiazepines. That's going to be your Xanax, your Ativans, your Valiums, your anti-anxiety narcotic medication. Okay? So what's the right one for you? It depends on your situation. If you are a young guy, young girl, you're not married, you don't have any kids, you don't have a job, you're fortunate enough to be on your family's insurance policy, then start at the very beginning. Go into detox and then go into residential and then go into PHP, IOP outpatient. Complete 150 days worth of treatment. That's going to be the best. I'm a firm believer there's no such thing as too much treatment in most cases. So do all of it. Now, if your circumstances are a little bit different and you are, say you're married and you have children and you have a career and your job doesn't really care about your issues, or you have financial situations and stuff like that, I get it. You have to analyze, your resources. But I will say this, nothing should come in front of you getting clean and sober. I've had many situations, I've met with many people that they have to quit their job. That's just the reality of it. They have to tell their job, you know what? I know you don't want me to go off to treatment, but guess what? I have to. Because if I don't, then I'm not going to be working here much longer anyway, because I could die. So you can't let a lot of external things come between you and doing what's right for you by means of your sobriety. So what type of treatment? The beginning. In most cases, I would venture to say 90% of all cases, if resources are there and you're able, go into detox and then go through every level of care available to you. The one thing that I hate, and I see this happen a lot, is when people try and bypass levels of care. They're like, well, I don't want to do detox and I don't want to do residential. In fact, I don't want to do any sort of inpatient. I just want to do an outpatient level of care. I want to go somewhere for a couple days out of the week and I'll do a group and I'll check in and I'll do a urine screen and a breathalyzer and that'll be good. That hardly ever works. And then I get the phone call, well, that didn't work, Tom. Well, yeah, I get it. I understand. It hardly ever does. What you're essentially trying to do is, well, you're trying to do it your own way. And if you are an alcoholic or a drug addict like I was, well, then in fact, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to do that. So don't try and bypass levels of care. Okay. If you have the availability, and these are obviously very blanket, but go and do a full stay of treatment, all levels of care. Hands down, that is going to be my number one recommendation. The next question I get asked quite often is, how long is treatment? Well, this goes exactly with what I was just talking about. What type of treatment is best for me? Well, that's going to directly determine how long you're in treatment. Again, I just said there's no such thing as too much treatment in most cases. So go as long as humanly possible, as long as resources allow. If you're fortunate enough to have health insurance, most health insurances are very favorable towards treatment. Now, there's nuances in there, and that for the sake of today, I'm not going to get into that. But what I have seen work for most people is on average between 90 and 120 days, 3 to 4 months. That's going to be the best. And then if you have availability to go into sober living after that, that's going to be even better. But I'll get to that. So how long is treatment? It needs to be as long as it needs to be. What I caution people, and I do this a lot with family members. In fact, I had a conversation with a family yesterday, and when I said 3 to 4 months, they about fell out their chair. And I said, well, why? Well, we just can't imagine our son being in treatment for 4 months. We don't think he needs that. And it's like, well, he's 19 years old. At this point of the conversation, I had known that he was ready to go to treatment, and he was ready to go to treatment as long as he could. It was a control issue on behalf of his parents. They weren't able to, you know, deal with that. They didn't want him going away for treatment that long. And I see people do these 30-day stints and stuff like that. And there's treatment centers out there that will tell you, hey, you come to us for 30 days, you're going to be good. And they'll take your money, or they'll bill your insurance for 30 days, and then they'll send you on your way. And most of the time it ends in relapse. And then you call back, hey, that didn't work. Okay, come on back in. Well, let's try and prevent that. And let's just stay in treatment as long as possible. Again, a lot of this hinges on resources and availabilities, and everybody's circumstances are different. I'm not here to deny that. But you really have to analyze the situation and determine what's most important. Is it most important that I get clean and sober? Or is it most important that I seemingly try to provide for my family? And chances are you haven't been doing a good job of that recently. And if you don't have a family, well, you haven't been emotionally available to the people that love you most. You haven't been mentally okay. You've been spiritually bankrupt. Nothing else really matters at this stage. If you're at the stage of seeking treatment, then nothing else matters. It really doesn't. So stay in treatment as long as you possibly can. That is my best piece of advice. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to type them in and I will get to them. The next question that I get asked a lot, and I have 7 of them in total that I'm going to get to. Will my insurance cover treatment? This is a very, very tough question to answer because insurance goes all across the board. You have Medicare, you have Medicaid, you have marketplace plans, you have employer plans, you have self-funded plans, you have plans that are Christian-based, that people pay money into a pool, and that money is dispersed as needed for members of that particular insurance. It's really hard to say. A lot of times what is the best when it comes to insurance covering treatment are going to be employer plans, right? If you have insurance through your employer, those are generally the best. And then we go into in-network versus out-of-network, right? Hands down, you're going to find your best treatment in an out-of-network provider. Now, why is that? Because an out-of-network provider hasn't contracted with an insurance company for a specific reimbursement rate. Okay. A lot of times out-of-network providers get reimbursed more money than, say, an in-network provider does. Now, there's pros and cons to that. As an in-network provider, you can count on, say, Blue Cross Blue Shield. If you call Blue Cross, hey, I need treatment for my son. Do you have any recommendations? They're going to give a list of preferred providers. And that's going to be all of their in-network facilities. So yeah, you can go to this place. You can go to this place. They're in-network with your insurance. And you leave that call. Okay, great. I'm going to send my son to this place. They're in the network. It's good. That's okay. But in most cases, in-network providers are more of a volume play. Right? Because the reimbursement rates are lower. So they have to have more people in the facility in order for it to make sense financially as a business to stay open. As an out-of-network provider, the reimbursement rates are generally higher, so we don't require as many patients as an in-network provider would. Now, what does that allow us to do? That allows us to spend more time with the people that we have. That allows us to be more attentive to details. That allows us to treat the clients, I'm reluctant to say better, but they get a higher quality of treatment. Again, because our reimbursement rates are higher, it allows us to treat not as many clients. In the funds, the reimbursements we can utilize inside the treatment process for ancillary things that makes the overall treatment experience better. So, will my insurance cover treatment? In a lot of cases, yes, it will. But the best thing to do is, number one, you can contact your insurance provider and they'll give you a list of people. The next best thing you can do, honestly, and this is a shameless plug, but you reach out to me right here, Tom at Real Recovery Talk, and I can take a look at whatever you want. If you have somebody that needs treatment and you have insurance, I can find a place for you to go. I guarantee you that. Okay. So that's that. The next question is going to be, what does a typical day look like in treatment? Well, again, this is different depending on what level of care you're in. If you're in detox, you're probably laying down, you're eating food, you are trying not to be sick, you're trying to sleep, you're just you feel like you want to die. You're not going to, but you feel like it. You're just trying to get your bearings back, right? Now, as treatment goes on and you start to feel a little bit better, now you're incorporating sorry. Now you're incorporating more groups, you're incorporating more individual sessions, you have an individual therapist, you're participating in the community more, you're feeling good, right? A lot of treatment programs have a fitness component. We do, and we have Rock Recovery Center in South Florida. We've been open over 10 years now, so we've been open a long time. We've treated a lot of people. And a portion of our treatment process is fitness. And why? Because move a muscle, change a thought. Very plain and simple. Fitness and exercise is one of the best antidepressants ever, and there's no debating that. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be working out as you're in detox. You're gonna start incorporating that as you can, as you start feeling better, as you maybe put a little bit of weight on. But what does a typical day look like? I'll use us for an example. Okay, we don't treat anybody in that first 30 days of sobriety. Generally, sometimes we get people that come at about 7 to 10 days of sobriety after they've completed detox and they're medically okay, and a doctor has signed off, hey, they're okay to enter into your program. So let's assume they come to us at day 30. Well, the process is you come in, you do your intake, right? Generally, the very next day, you're going to meet with your primary therapist, and that is going to be a licensed clinician, right? It's going to be a licensed mental health counselor. It's going to be a licensed clinical social worker, somebody licensed, right? And they're going to be your therapist throughout the treatment process, okay? You meet with them, you do your biopsychosocial. Basically, it's just a large questionnaire. It gives the therapist an opportunity to get to know you and really figure out, okay, these are the things that we need to work on throughout the treatment process. Johnny, you're going to be here 90 days. These are the areas that we want to hone in on, right? And the therapists are obviously very highly trained in this. And so you go at they kind of guide you through this process. After you complete your biopsychosocial, they give you a master treatment plan. These are the things that we're going to be working on. That stuff all happens in the first couple of days. And, at this point, you maybe have 30, 35 days clean. You're feeling good. Okay, these are the things I'm going to work on, right? Now, the treatment process for us, again, I'm going to use us specifically. We are a 5-day-a-week program. What does that mean? We offer clinical services 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, okay? On Mondays, you're in group in the morning from 9:30 to 12:30. You're in group in the evening from 5:30 to 8:30, so you have a few hours in between. You're going to eat lunch, maybe you're going to hang out, and I don't know what you're going to do in that time. It's downtime, right? But you're in group 6 hours a day, generally Monday through Friday. You're also going to meet with your individual session, your individual therapist once, maybe twice a week, depending on the severity of the situation. That happens basically through the whole PHP, that day 30 to day 60. That's it. You're going to groups, you're having your individual session, you're having some case management sessions. Chances are the treatment center transports you to and from all of these appointments and groups and stuff like that. And you're learning about addiction. You're learning about yourself. You're learning why I do the things that I do, why I use the way that I use, why I drink the way that I drink. Things are starting to kind of fall into place. That stuff doesn't happen in generally the first 30 days. You're just trying to get your bearings about in the first 30 days, right? So from day 30 to day 60, you're busy. You're in groups, individuals, case management. You're acclimated into the community. Maybe you're going to meetings. You're starting to really build a sober support network. You're understanding and learning about addiction. I drank in this situation. I drank in that situation. I drugged here. I drugged there. You're starting to learn about triggers and the things that when these things happen, I tend to use when I go in this town, or if I hang out with these people, stuff like that. You're getting submerged with information about why you use to begin with. Okay. And that's a very crucial part of the treatment process. Hence why I tell people all the time, you can't bypass levels of care because each level of care serves a purpose. Now, when you transition out of that level of care and then you enter into more of an intensive outpatient level of care, and again, I'm going to keep this specific to us, but treatment centers, generally speaking, fall within this same framework. When you're in an intensive outpatient level of care, now we're going to incorporate, hey, let's go out and get a job. We're not looking for a career. I'm not saying, if you're an accountant, go look for a job at a Fortune 500 company. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not suggesting that. I want you to go to the nearest Publix, Piggly Wiggly, wherever you are, get a job bagging groceries. 15, 20 hours a week, maybe. Something for time management, right? Getting you back out, doing things, working, earning a little bit of money. Nothing that you're going to, support yourself on for the rest of your life, but it's part of the process. You're going to go out and get this job 15, 20, maybe 25 hours a week, but you're also still attending clinical services. So instead of coming to treatment 5 days a week, now you have a job. Now you only got to come to us 3 days a week. 3 groups a day, still have your individual session, still have your case management session. And what does case management consist of? Case management is really if you have any legal issues, if you're having, custody battles, or if you're, whatever would fall underneath the scope of case management, stuff outside the realm of the addiction, this would fall under case management. Resume building, like I said, legal issues, sharing, treatment plans and stuff with attorneys, fill in the blank. It can be a lot of different things. You're in this intensive outpatient level of care. Now, remember, when it comes to levels of care, this is going to be roughly starting at day 60. Okay, so you have 60 days clean, and now you're going out to get a job. We're going to stay in intensive outpatient level of care for potentially the next 30 to 60 days. In some cases, can be longer, depending on the resources. Staying in 3-day-a-week IOP, coming to groups, all that stuff. Then you transition to outpatient, okay? So now you're going from maybe 15, 20 to 25 hours a week. Now we're up to 35, 40, right? A full-time job, which is what most people are supposed to do. But see how this is all it all balances out, right? I'm not suggesting you go out and get a full-time job until you have 4 or 5 months clean and sober. I can't tell you how many times I have people that they put together 2 weeks clean and they want to go out and find a full-time job. You were literally just shooting heroin 2 weeks ago. And now all of a sudden, what is of utmost importance is going out and getting a full-time job because FOMO. You're missing out. The world's just passing you by. Well, need I remind you, 2-3 weeks ago, you were homeless. Lost all your relationships. Nobody wants to be around you. They don't trust you. They think that you're potentially going to die. So getting a full-time job isn't very important right now. What's important is figuring out the addiction and how we can do away with that. So on the outpatient level of care, you're coming to treatment once, maybe twice a week, and now you're working full-time, okay? And then when you complete treatment, again, 4 to 5 months into this process, then you can go into sober living potentially, okay? So I hope that covers what does a day of treatment look like. Every treatment center is different. They all have their schedules and how they operate. Some treatment centers operate 5-day like us. Some treatment centers operate 7 days a week. We don't do that model. We do 5-day. We incorporate fitness into our treatment program. We also incorporate adventure, like experiential type therapy. We're contracted with Stoked on Life. We're in South Florida, West Palm Beach. We're 5 minutes from the beach. So once a week, all of our clients are going down to the ocean and we're having a group there, and maybe they're getting on the surfboards and, figuring out like, hey, we have all these resources at our fingertips. Let's utilize them. And the cool thing about that process is I'm a transplant. I came from Western Pennsylvania down to South Florida. And there's something to be said about experiencing sobriety in Florida. I didn't know that I was going to have fun and enjoy doing all this stuff. The only thing I knew that I enjoyed doing was drinking. That's it. And then when I got sober and I started incorporating this stuff, it became very apparent that this is what I wanted to do. Okay. Next question. Can I keep my job during treatment? Now, I get asked this a lot. If you're going inpatient, no. You can't, because what's important is treatment, not your job. Now, there are situations, again, like I said in the very beginning of this, there are situations in which you can't leave your job for whatever reason. I've heard them all, and there are situations that, just doesn't allow for it. But generally speaking, no, you can't keep your job. Or, well, let me rephrase that. You can't work while in inpatient treatment. It just doesn't work that way. You're too busy. There's not enough hours in the day. But can you keep your job? Yes. In the sense of, in most cases, and I'm not an attorney, do not take this as legal advice. Seek out whatever attorneys or whoever you want to for validation on this, but in most cases, people are covered by FMLA. okay, and short-term disability. If you go to your employer and you say, look, I need to take some time off for mental health issues, or, if you want to go to them and be honest and say, I'm struggling with addiction, they got to let you go. They have to. It's written in law. They have to let you go. And in fact, they have to keep your job available to you. But again, I'm not an attorney and I can't speak on behalf of all businesses that they actually follow the law. But I can tell you in the it's been 13 years now that I've been working in this field. 99% of the time, it's not an issue. Because as an employer, I don't want a lawsuit on my hands. If I have an employee that is coming to me and saying, I got issues, I need to go get those issues. I need to take care of these issues. Well, yeah, it stinks from an employer perspective, but what's the alternative? Tell them they can't? No, I don't care. Well, that could be very bad for them. And not to mention, once you go and take care of these issues and you become sober and clean and you're productive and this addiction is behind you and you're in such a better place, you're 10 times better of an employee. Most employers, they want their employees to be clean and sober and productive and do their job and do it well. So most employers are very favorable of this. What you don't want to have to happen is the employer come to you and say, you know what? You're out of here. You're a liability. I can't have you here anymore. Because at that point, you don't have any options. They can fire you. And that was the case for me. I didn't go to my employer and say, hey, I got issues. They knew. And eventually I put them in a position to where they had to make a decision. And they fired me. Now, fortunately enough, I was able to maintain my insurance and go to treatment and stuff like that. But that's not the case for a lot of people. And a lot of people shy away from telling their employer for fear that they're going to get fired. Well, news to you, you're going to get fired. If you are a true addict, if you're a true alcoholic, the gig is going to be up at some point. They're going to catch on and you're going to be unemployed and you may not have insurance. You may not have the resources to go to treatment. And at that point, it becomes very, very difficult because going back to the first question, what type of treatment is right for me? Well, if you don't have the resources, now you're going to a state-funded facility where 90% of the people don't want to be there. They're just there for 3 hots and a cot. The employees that work at these places don't care about their jobs. They don't care about the people that are in them. The treatment is oftentimes subpar. That's the reality of it. That happens a lot. So if you're fortunate enough to have private insurance, whether that's through the marketplace or through an employer, utilize it. All right. Next question. What support do I have after treatment? What resources are available to me after I'm done with treatment? Okay, I'm going back to what I said before, sober living. I highly, 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 highly recommend people go to sober living. Why? Well, because sober living is exactly what it is. Sober living. Again, just because you completed 4 or 5 months of treatment doesn't mean that you're good. There's no medals, there's no trophies at the end. It's not, you don't get a stamp saying you're not going to drink and drug anymore. It doesn't work that way. Sober living is crucial in most cases because You're in an environment with other sober people. You're working a program of whatever it is that you choose, whether that's a 12-step based program, whether that's Celebrate Recovery, whether that's Smart Recovery, whether it's Dharma Recovery. I don't care. I personally am an advocate of a 12-step program, but 12-step programs don't have a monopoly on recovery. But I highly recommend going into sober living. Now, if you can't go to sober living, what resources are available to you? Other sober people. We're in America. Well, I mean, I am. I don't know where you're watching from, but Alcoholics Anonymous is all over the globe. It's in hundreds of countries. So, other sober people is going to be your best resource for when you complete treatment. Hands down. You know, we are who we surround ourselves with. If you are on a journey of wanting to be sober, then you best surround yourself with other sober people. I can't tell you how many times I have seen people complete treatment, right? They took 4 months out of their life. 4 months, did all this work. And they go back home and they are just like, well, that was cool. That was fun. That was great. I got to surf. I got to make new friends. I got to do, have a therapist and all this stuff. But they forgot that like the work doesn't stop there. You still have to maintain your sobriety. I'm coming up on 15 years sober, and I still have to maintain my sobriety. I go to a meeting every Wednesday, hands down. No negotiating on that, unless life circumstances. So other sober people is going to be your number one best resource, whether that's Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Smart Recovery. I named them off, right? Find your tribe, get a community of people that you can rely on. And to add on to that, stay communicative with them. Be open. Tell them what's going on. Hey, I just got out of a 90-day program, a 4-month program. I'm just returning back home. I don't know anybody that's sober. I need help. They'll help you. I guarantee you. I promise you that they will help you. Because the trick to all of this is, as sober people, one of the biggest things that keeps us sober is helping other sober people. So we need people like you to come to us to say, hey, I need help. Because by us helping you helps us. That's the secret sauce in this whole thing. Helping other people stay sober from what you learned through your processes. It's really, there's something to be said about being able to help somebody maintain their sobriety. It really is. It's I've gotten to accomplish so many things in my sobriety. In almost 15 years of sobriety, I've gotten to accomplish a lot on all aspects of my life, financially, career-wise. I got a great podcast. I got people in my life, relationships. I have children. I have a lovely wife. I have a beautiful home. I've got cars in the driveway. But there's something to be said about helping somebody else stay sober. There's no feeling like it. I get the emails from people on how the podcast impacted them, how I was able to be a part of their sobriety process. That fuels me. That gives me the drive to want to go another day, to stay sober another day. And I'm not immune to relapse. I'm not. Just the same as somebody's got 30 days clean and I'm coming up on 15 years, I'm only one sip of alcohol away from being back in treatment. That's why it is very important to utilize and build a sober community of people. I think that is hands down the number one most important thing. And I've talked about this on the podcast a lot. So, and if you don't know what the podcast is, well, here it is, Real Recovery Talk. It's right there. There's a logo in the corner, right? It's on Apple Podcast, it's on Spotify, and it's on YouTube. Chances are you're watching this on YouTube. Okay. Last question, and I get asked this a lot. Can I have visitors in treatment? Yeah, you can, depending on where you're at in the treatment process. If you're in detox, no. How do I know that visitor isn't coming to bring you a bag of drugs? If you're in your first 30 days of treatment, it's not a good idea to have visitors. It's not. Because I tell this to people all the time. When you're in the treatment process, when you're in the sobriety process, getting sober, you don't know what's going on. I'm fresh off of drugs. I'm fresh off of alcohol. We can't have any outside noise. None. That can't be our kids. That can't be our spouses. That can't be our parents. That can't be our rich uncle that, pays our way through everything. Nothing. This is the time that we focus solely on ourselves. And most families are dysfunctional to a degree. And if you think that your family's not dysfunctional, well, that's the problem in and of itself. My family's dysfunctional. Every family has a level of dysfunction in it. So it's important to not get caught up in that dysfunction when we're in treatment. It's very important in the first 30 days to not have visitors, because they can derail everything. It can derail absolutely everything. We've got stories and stories and stories for days on people, on families in particular, that have derailed the treatment process. Think about it. Mom, mother bear. She can't fathom the fact that little Johnny's sitting in treatment somewhere and she just misses him so much. Oh, I miss Johnny. And her motherly instincts kick in and she goes to visit Johnny, and maybe the treatment center allows it for whatever reason. Well, she gets there and emotions are high. She wants Johnny home. Clouds her judgment. And Johnny's like, I don't want to be in this place to begin with. I don't know why I'm here. Well, maybe mom takes him home. Maybe he calls dad. Dad, hey, I'm good. And dad is completely ignorant to addiction. Says, oh, he's been in treatment, 2 weeks. He hasn't used in 2 weeks. He's probably good. Dad goes and picks him up. That's when I get the phone call. Hey, my son relapsed again. Yeah, he did. Maybe now he'll stay in treatment. Needs to stay in treatment. You guys can't go and visit. I tell everybody, when I work with parents and I'm getting their loved one into treatment, whether that's here or whether that's anywhere else, you take a back seat until invited in. You can call me with emergencies. An emergency has to be an emergency, not, hey, Johnny called me and said that Frankie ate his Cheerios last night and he's really upset. That's not an emergency. An emergency is, hey, Johnny called me. He said he's about 2 seconds from walking out the door. Okay, that's an emergency. You can call me. But you don't need to contact him. Hey, Johnny, how's everything going? Hey, Johnny, how's everything going? No, none of that. Let Johnny figure out his process. In fact, Johnny could be calling you. Mom, get me the hell out of this place. Dad, get me out of here. And your parental instincts are to protect your child, and you're going to want to. Oh my gosh, what's going on in there? He's telling me that there's rats and that there's people getting high and there's I've heard stories it's crazy. Now, some of them could be true. I don't know. We don't have rats. We don't have people using. But most of the time, they're making up stuff. so you can come and pick them up and get them out of treatment. This is why we're very firm on no visitors. No. Now, when you get 30, 45, 60 days sobriety under your belt, your parents want to come and take you out to dinner, take you out to lunch. Okay, cool. You've done great work. You've worked with your therapist a lot. You're an asset to the community. You're crushing it. Of course, go. We're not about tearing families apart. We're about reuniting families and making them healthy and whole again. We want families to be reunited. And the cool thing is that if people do this process to the extent and take our suggestions and do what we say, the relationships from these situations, the bonds that are created are so much stronger. It's just how it is. And it's not a long period of time when we generally look at the overarching picture. 6 months. For a 20-year-old kid, 6 months. Mom, Dad, chill. You've lived your life. You're doing great. You got to allow your kid to live his. You can't control this anymore. He's an adult. He has to figure this out. And you have to let this process play through in an appropriate manner. That's it. Those are the 7 questions that I get asked generally most of the time. I hope that it helps. I hope that you got something out of this. And yeah, I want to do these more. Tuesdays at 6:30 seems to be a relatively good time for me. So that's what I'm going to shoot for. Again, if you want to contact me, info@realrecoverytalk.com. The podcast right here. Okay. Here. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. You can email me directly if you want to, tom@realrecoverytalk.com. We have the Sobriety Network support group. Okay. And that looks like this. So when you go into Facebook, it looks like that. Okay. Let's see. Hi, Nicole. I don't know if you're still on here. D, thank you. Oh, we're awesome. I know. Thank you. Thanks, D. I really do appreciate it. All right, that's it for me. So again, podcast is every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday at 7 a.m. No, 7:30. They come out a.m. And then the YouTube video always comes out the same day, but 30 minutes later. So do me a huge, huge favor. Leave a review, share it with somebody that needs it. And yeah, reach out to me. Let me know if there's anything that I can do or any topics that we can discuss on the podcast and stuff like that. No, the very last thing, which I should have talked about this in the beginning, our big book study, we do that every single Monday night at 5:00 p.m. Eastern time. It's myself and Eric. We're live, and go to realrecoverytalk.com/bigbookstudy to sign up. And you don't have to be there live every week. You will get kind of put in a portal. And yeah, you'll get all the recordings. So I think we're on week 6 now. Or we just completed week 6. We're going into week 7. So, all right, y'all. See you next week.